The sun had that gold tint that only rich places seem to buy. Light that glows, not shines. The kind that flatters linen suits and turns every glass of champagne into a photograph. I stood by the veranda railing watching waiters adjust chairs that already looked perfect. My palms rested on the cool wood rail, calloused from decades of engines, ladders, and salt. The groom, my daughter's groom, walked by and smirked, eyes landing on my hands. "You must have worked hard for those," he said, the way a man comments on a relic in a museum. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a story like this one. I smiled back, didn't say a thing. There's a quiet power in silence, especially when the world expects you to flinch. I've been retired 5 years now, though I still wake before dawn like the siren might call again. 40 years in fire, half of them crawling through smoke too thick to remember faces. I'd traded that for running a community kitchen downtown, fixing leaky roofs for folks who couldn't afford a contractor. The work is slower, the gratitude quieter, but it keeps a man honest. He, my future son-in-law, had a name that sounded like it belonged on brass doors. His family had arrived in a fleet of matching black cars, their shoes clicking in rhythm on the marble. My daughter's face lit up around them, proud, nervous, like she'd finally found her place in a world she used to watch through glass. I tried to fit in, I really did. Bought a new jacket. Polished my boots till I could see my reflection. What little hair I had left cropped neat. But class. Class isn't a costume, is it? It's a tone, a rhythm, an invisible handshake you either know or don't. During rehearsal, I noticed little things. The father bragged about their family's heritage trust, but he stumbled over the founding date. The groom wore gold cufflinks etched with an insignia so crisp it looked laser-cut, brand new. When I leaned closer, I caught the tiniest glint of a modern security tag on the underside. Retail residue. My mind tucked it away. Old habits die hard. Firefighters notice what doesn't belong. A smoke line where there shouldn't be one. A locked door in a building that claims to be empty. As the minister walked them through the vows, I stood off to the side, hands folded behind my back. My daughter glanced over once, smiled, tight, apologetic. I nodded. This was her day, not mine. Later, during the pre-dinner cocktail, a waiter handed me a glass of something bubbly I couldn't pronounce. The groom's mother appeared, shimmering in pearls the size of grapes. "So, Alvin," she said, stretching my name like taffy, "you run, what did you call it, a kitchen for the underprivileged?" "Yes, ma'am." "How noble," she replied, the word dripping sweet like overripe fruit. She turned before I could answer, already, laughing with a man in cufflinks identical to her son's. I sipped the drink. Tasted like carbonated apology. Back inside, the planner was setting the vendor board against a mirrored wall. Names, service times, payment schedules. The kind of information no one but an organizer should care about. But I found myself looking closer. There it was again. The same surname appearing 3 times, once on catering, once on floral design, once on a company labeled Foundation Coordination. Foundation Coordination. Odd phrase. I took a slow walk around the room, pretending to admire the setup while my phone camera stayed low, snapping a picture or two of that board. Nothing sneaky, just documentation, for memory's sake. When I got home that night, the house felt smaller than usual. My dog lifted his head once, then went back to sleep. I sat at the kitchen table and rubbed my palms together, feeling every ridge and burn scar that had shaped them. Those hands had pulled strangers from fire, rebuilt homes from ash, ladled soup into hundreds of bowls. Now they were something to laugh at. I opened my laptop, county registry page, public records, property deeds. The glow of the screen cast blue shadows over the walls, flickering like the old flame light I'd once chased for a living. The name from that vendor board appeared again, linked to 3 parcels sold in the last year under a charitable renovation grant, all flipped within months. Every sale connected to the same heritage fund the groom's father had bragged about. I leaned back, stared at the ceiling. Coincidence? Maybe. But the air had that same thickness it gets before a fire breaks out. A pressure, a hum, a warning. And there, in the half-dark, I whispered to no one in particular, "If you think these hands are just for fixing roofs, son, you've got another thing coming." The morning after the rehearsal, the house still smelled faintly of smoke, not the kind that burns, but the kind that lingers. You know, the ghost of 1,000 fires that never quite leave your clothes. I made coffee in the chipped mug my daughter painted when she was 10. The one that says "World's Best Dad" in crooked letters. The handle's been glued twice. I've kept it anyway. Some things don't need to be replaced, just held together. The laptop from last night still sat open on the table. Screen asleep, little blue light blinking like a slow heartbeat. I touched the trackpad and the records came back to life. Rows of addresses, owner names, dates of sale. I scrolled slowly the way you scan for embers in a dark room. Always careful, always methodical. 3 houses, same foundation coordination company listed under renovation permits. All flipped in under 6 months. All resold to people on the veteran and widow housing grant lists. Now that could have been legal. I'm no detective and I've got no appetite for conspiracy. But the prices were wrong. Too high for the neighborhoods, too clean for old houses, and each time the profit was wired to a shell account under the same trust the groom's father bragged about. I leaned back and rubbed my face. My reflection on the dark screen looked older than I felt, like a man halfway between truth and trouble. That's when the phone buzzed. "Alvin, you up this early for a reason?" It was Frank, old engine buddy of mine, now working in building inspections. "Just doing a little reading," I said. "Tell me something. You ever heard of Marshfield Heritage Foundation?" He laughed low. "Yeah, fancy folks. They submitted a few renovation permits through the city last spring. Weird paperwork, though. Had out-of-state contractors but listed local addresses. Can you send me what's public?" "Sure thing, Chief," he said, using the nickname from years back. "You digging into something?" "Not yet," I told him. "Just clearing smoke." He grunted. "Smoke means fire, Al." After he hung up, I stared at the mug again. The crooked letters. Thought about how proud my daughter was when she gave it to me. I remembered her saying, "I made the handle thick so it won't ever break." Guess we both misjudged the strength of things. By noon, I was down at the community kitchen. The line stretched around the block. Folks holding paper plates, babies on hips, men with faces cracked from years of winter wind. My team moved like clockwork. Ellie at the soup line, Marcus on bread, me handling whatever broke down. The smell of stew and bleach mixed into something familiar, something grounding. While washing pans, my mind kept circling back to that vendor board. That phrase, foundation coordination, felt like a euphemism, the way people say creative accounting when they mean theft. I couldn't shake it. After lunch rush, I took my phone out back to the alley and searched property filings again. This time, I dug into the grant applications themselves, all public, buried on the county's open data portal. Each one signed by a C. Marshfield, same last name as the groom's father, different first initial every time. I laughed softly. "Come on now," I whispered. You couldn't even make up better aliases. A gust of wind swept through the alley, catching the smell of soup and diesel. I watched a man in a suit pass by on the far sidewalk, talking loudly into his phone, bragging about margins and markets. That's when it hit me. These people, this Groom and his circle, they built worlds out of illusion, shells stacked on shells until even they believed it. Me? I just built roofs. That night I printed the documents and laid them across the kitchen table like cards in a poker game. The dog snored at my feet. The lamp hummed. 3 addresses circled in red. 3 different grantors. Same IP signature on every digital form. One of the digital notarizations even carried the timestamp from a Sunday. Offices don't notarize on Sundays. I took a pen and wrote a single note in the margin, fiction dressed as philanthropy. My phone buzzed again. A message from my daughter. Her, "Dad, rehearsal went great today. Everyone loves the setup. Please just be civil tomorrow, okay? He really wants this to be perfect." Me, always civil. Her, promise? Me, promise. I stared at that word for a long time. Promises are easy when you're only protecting yourself. Harder when truth can burn through someone you love. Later that evening, Frank called back. "Got those files for you, and you were right. That foundation's name shows up on an open complaint from a veteran down on 5th. Says they charged application fees for a free grant. Is it public record?" "Yeah. County clerk logged it 3 months ago. No resolution yet." "Thanks, brother. You sure you want to wade into this, Al? These people got lawyers." I looked out the window at the dim streetlights flickering like tired candles. Lawyers don't scare me. I've run into buildings falling apart faster than their stories. He chuckled. "Still got that fireman mouth, huh?" "Guess some fires never go out," I said, and hung up. At midnight, I sat outside on the porch with the dog, both of us listening to the crickets. Somewhere faintly, I could hear a train passing. The soft thunder that always reminded me of distance. My daughter's world was just a few towns away, but it might as well have been another country. I thought about the Groom's smirk, the way he rolled his cufflinks like a man sure he'd won. And I thought about those houses. Real families in real debt. Flipping like cards in a magician's hand. You can only lie to people who don't look. And I've spent my whole life looking at things on fire. Before going to bed, I slid the printed pages into a manila folder and tucked it under my jacket. A firefighter's instinct. You always keep the evidence dry. You never know when the storm hits. Sleep came slow. In my dreams, I heard alarms again. Not sirens exactly, but applause echoing through a ballroom. I saw my daughter in white spinning under chandeliers, and in every mirror around her, reflections of people who weren't real. I woke before dawn, heartbeat steady, mind sharper than it had been in years. Tomorrow would be the wedding, and one way or another the truth would walk down that aisle too. I arrived at the country club earlier than anyone else that morning. The sun hadn't fully climbed over the trees yet, and the dew made the grass sparkle like it was pretending to be something richer than it was. The main hall smelled of roses and waxed wood. Everywhere I looked, people were polishing things that were already perfect. The staff recognized me from rehearsal and nodded politely. The kind of nod you give to someone who doesn't quite belong but isn't causing trouble. I smiled back, quiet, carrying my jacket over one arm and the folder under the other. The ballroom looked different in the early light. Empty tables, white linen folded sharp as paper cuts. The stage at the far end was waiting for speeches and toasts that would sound good only until the champagne wore off. I ran a hand over one of the chairs and thought of all the people who'd never sit in rooms like this. Folks who built them, painted them, cleaned them, then disappeared before the party started. The groom walked in just then, checking his watch. He looked startled to see me there. "Morning," I said. He adjusted his tie. "Didn't expect you so soon." "Old habit," I told him. "Firehouse mornings start early." He smiled, that tight, condescending smile people give when they don't know how to talk to workmen. You sure you're comfortable here, Alvin? These events can be intense. I've seen worse, I said. Try a kitchen fire in July. He laughed half-hearted, then walked off to answer a call. I could hear his voice down the hall, confident, rehearsed, the kind of man who could sell a lie because he believed it while speaking it. By 10, the place was alive. Guests in pressed suits, glittering dresses, camera flashes bouncing off chandeliers. The orchestra warmed up in the corner and someone handed me a boutonniere which I fumbled with until a kind young waiter pinned it for me. When my daughter walked in, everything else faded. She was radiant, not because of the dress, though it was beautiful, but because of that nervous smile she had when she was proud and scared at the same time. She hugged me tight. You okay? She whispered. Always. You didn't look into anything, did you? I paused. I looked at you, I said softly. That's all I needed. Her eyes searched mine. Maybe she knew I was lying. Maybe she just wanted to believe I wasn't. The ceremony went smooth, too smooth, almost rehearsed beyond feeling. The vows were eloquent, the laughter carefully timed, the tears caught by the photographer before they could smudge mascara. I clapped, I smiled, I even danced a little with her during the father-daughter dance. For those 3 minutes I forgot about deeds and shell companies and lies that smell of money. But truth has a way of finding its cue. After dinner, the MC announced the toasts. First came the best man and a story about college camaraderie and an expensive prank that sounded more cruel than funny. Then the maid of honor, teary and sweet, painting my daughter as a saint. And then the groom lifted his glass. I'd like to say something, he began, the microphone catching that confident rhythm only the rich seem to master. When two families come together, it's not just love, it's legacy. My family has built a legacy of service and generosity for generations. And today, we welcome into that story a woman of grace and, well, humble roots. There was polite laughter. He smiled wider. My wife's father, he gestured toward me, is a man who's worked hard, tirelessly in his own charitable ways. I suppose we could say philanthropy runs in the family now, though on slightly different scales. A few chuckles, not kind ones. I felt my jaw tighten. The microphone caught a faint feedback squeal, almost like the world itself was wincing. He went on, but that's what makes this union so special. The blending of perspectives, the joining of different worlds. Applause. Glasses clinked. Cameras flashed. My daughter's smile froze like a portrait. I lifted my glass just enough to nod, then took a sip. Champagne tasted like salt. The groom looked at me, expecting maybe a return toast or a laugh. I gave him neither. Just a steady look. The same look I gave a burning building before stepping inside. You don't flinch at heat if you plan to walk through it. Later, as the crowd dispersed to refill drinks and the band started a waltz, I approached him near the bar. Good speech, I said. Thank you, Alvin. He turned to order another round, casual as ever. You liked the part about legacy? I did, especially the part about service and generosity. He smiled, thinking it was praise. I leaned in slightly. You ever meet the Thompson family? Over on 5th Street? He blinked. Can't say I have. Funny, they said your foundation promised them a roof repair after that big storm last winter. He laughed softly. We help a lot of people, hard to keep track. Yeah, I imagine it would be. I watched his hand tighten around the glass. He turned, smiling for the guests approaching. Excuse me, Alvin. Duty calls. He walked off and I saw the brief flicker in his posture. that half second where arrogance turns to worry. He hadn't expected me to know names. I went outside for air. The sun was beginning to dip, painting the sky in copper and wine. Behind the club, catering trucks lined the service road. One of the drivers was smoking, phone in hand. "You work for the Marshfield Foundation?" I asked casually. He looked up, startled. "Me? Nah, I'm just with Evercrest Catering, though." He shrugged. "They pay all our invoices through some trust account. Weird, right? Usually it's the client direct. This one came from something called HH Heritage." I nodded slowly. "Appreciate it, son." He frowned. "You part of them?" I smiled. "Something like that." When I walked back inside, the ballroom lights had dimmed for the first dance. My daughter and the groom spun slowly under 1,000 tiny bulbs, her smile back in place, his whispering something into her ear that made her nod stiffly. I wondered what he'd said. I wondered if she was already starting to feel the cracks under the polish. At the head table, I noticed the groom's father showing off a cufflink to one of the guests. The emblem gleamed gold, same as before. But when the man turned his wrist, the light caught the underside and I saw that faint plastic glint again. That little RFID tag. Modern, disposable, bought, not inherited. Legacy, my ass. By the time dessert came, I'd made up my mind. Tomorrow, after the ceremony glow had faded, I'd start pulling threads for real. I wouldn't embarrass my daughter in front of her guests. Not yet. But I'd be ready. I'd gather facts, prepare truth like a controlled burn. You don't start a fire without a plan for where it'll stop. When I left that night, the parking lot was quiet except for cicadas and the hum of generators keeping the lights alive. I sat in my truck for a long while, folder on the passenger seat, headlights off. The reflection of the ballroom shimmered in the windshield, people laughing, clinking glasses, toasting illusions. I whispered to the empty cab, "You can toast all you want, son, but some of us know the smell of smoke." Then I turned the key, the old engine grumbling awake, and drove into the dark. I didn't sleep much that night. Truth has a sound when it starts knocking, like a steady drip in a quiet house. You try to ignore it, but it seeps into your dreams, echoing until you finally get up to find the leak. By 6 a.m., I was back at the kitchen. The morning volunteers were surprised to see me so early, but they knew better than to ask. I chopped onions until the tears blurred my vision enough to hide the ones that weren't from the onions. After the breakfast rush, I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat by the cracked window. Outside, the street was coming alive. A man pushing a grocery cart full of bottles. A mother dragging a stroller with one squeaky wheel. The world I understood. The honest one. I opened the folder again. The documents were already soft at the corners from how many times I'd read them. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I knew this. The kind of men who build lies that deep don't stop until someone burns them down. I wasn't planning to burn anything, just shine a little light. But light can be cruel when it lands on the wrong truth. The wedding was that afternoon. The drive back to the country club took less than an hour, but my mind stretched that drive into miles of thought. I rehearsed words I'd never say. The kind that start fights, end families, and echo long after the applause fades. When I arrived, the place was already humming. Trucks unloading crates of flowers, camera crews setting up tripods, event coordinators barking orders into headsets. The air smelled like money again, perfume and power. I parked behind the kitchen entrance where the staff smoked between shifts. Familiar air. Honest smoke. Inside, a young man in a headset waved at me. "Sir, you're early again. Ballroom's locked for setup." "That's fine," I said. "Just wanted to make sure the AV team's got everything running." He blinked. "AV?" "The screens, projectors, sound, that kind of thing." Oh, yeah. They're setting up now. We've got Wi-Fi throughout the club, 20 fiber speed. Even the ballroom's got AirPlay if you need to stream something. Guests love showing slideshows. I smiled faintly. Good to know. He led me inside, talking too fast. I only half listened, my eyes tracing the cables, the screens, the Wi-Fi router blinking near the back of the hall. All the pieces were there. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I'd need them. The same planner from rehearsal was giving last-minute instructions to the florists. She recognized me and offered a polite smile, cautious as if she'd heard whispers already. Everything's beautiful, I told her. Thank you, she said, visibly relieved. Your daughter has excellent taste. She always did. For a while I just wandered the edges of the ballroom, pretending to admire the setup while my mind worked. There's a rhythm firefighters learn when a blaze is about to break, the silence before it roars. This room had that rhythm now, even with violins warming up. The groom's father was at the far end speaking with two men in suits. They had the same haircut, the kind that costs more than a week's groceries. They laughed too loud. That hollow, practiced laugh of people who've never actually been funny. My daughter walked in a few minutes later, radiant again, and hugged me. Dad, she said, eyes bright but worried, you're not planning anything, are you? I smiled softly. Planning to walk you down that aisle, that's all. She searched my face like she was looking for smoke again. I kept my tone calm, steady. The voice of a man who'd held collapsing ceilings on his shoulders. You promise? Always. She exhaled, hugged me tighter. Her perfume was faint, lavender and something I couldn't name. But it hit me right in the chest. She still smelled like the little girl who'd ride on my shoulders to the fair, clutching cotton candy bigger than her head. For a moment I almost believed I could let it all go. Almost. During the rehearsal dinner I'd seen too much. The numbers, the documents, the arrogance behind that toast. A man who could humiliate someone's father in front of hundreds didn't deserve mercy. But my daughter deserved peace. So I needed a way to tell the truth without breaking her world in half. That's when I noticed the club's marketing table near the entrance. Brochures for charity partnerships, foundation collaborations, event sponsorships. One of them listed the Marshfield Heritage Foundation as a donor. I flipped the brochure over and saw a QR code linking to their website. I scanned it on my phone. The page loaded instantly. Glossy photos, smiling families, a tagline. Building homes, building hope. I'd seen that slogan before. It was copied from another, foundation's mission statement, word for word. So that was it. They didn't just fake deeds and grants. They stole identity. My hand clenched around the phone. I took a slow breath. There was a Donate Now button at the top of the page. I clicked it. The payment gateway redirected through a merchant service I recognized. One that Frank had mentioned in his report. The same routing number that showed up on the veteran complaint. And right there in the fine print of the confirmation page was an address. The same P.O. box listed under the trust name. No mistake now. They'd built an empire on the illusion of giving. I saved the page offline, took screenshots, and emailed them to myself. Then I tucked my phone back into my pocket and walked toward the back of the ballroom, where the AV techs were testing microphones. Hey, I said, nodding at the guy behind the control board. You the one in charge of the projectors? Yeah. We'll have a slideshow up after the first dance. Good system? The best. All Wi-Fi connected, just cast from your phone or laptop. I smiled. Mind showing me how it works? He grinned. Sure, you planning to surprise your daughter with something? Something like that. He showed me the app, the pairing code, how to link to the big screen at the front. Super easy, he said. Even my dad could do it. I chuckled under my breath. I'll take that as a challenge. When he turned away, I tested the connection on my phone. The projector mirrored my screen for a moment, blue background, my inbox flashing up for just a second before I turned it off. Fast, clean, invisible. Everything worked. I walked outside, breathing deep. The afternoon air was heavy with summer heat. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower droned. I sat on a stone bench near the fountain and let my hands rest on my knees. The scars glowed faintly under the sunlight. Pale against tan skin, little rivers of old pain. I thought about all the fires I'd walked through. Real ones, not social ones. And how they always started the same way. Quiet, unassuming, spreading beneath floors while everyone inside danced. The country club was no different. People dressed nice, smiled for photos, pretended the world couldn't touch them. But fire doesn't care about invitations. Inside, laughter swelled again as guests began to arrive. Music, chatter, glasses clinking. The life of people who think truth can't reach them. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked back in. Whatever happened tonight, I'd keep my promise. No shouting, no chaos, just truth. Plain, steady, and public enough that no one could bury it again. And if anyone asked how I managed to show those files on the big screen, I'd just smile and say, "The country club has great Wi-Fi." By mid-morning, the air felt too still, like the whole world had taken one long breath and forgotten how to let it out. The club lawn shimmered in heat, each blade of grass standing stiff as wire. A string quartet tuned beneath a white canopy, notes rising and falling in cautious half-steps. From where I stood at the edge of the patio, it sounded like the moment before a storm. Beautiful, tense, inevitable. I'd come early again, though I had no real job left to do. My daughter was with the bridal party upstairs. The groom and his men were posing somewhere for photos. I waited near the service entrance, nursing a paper cup of bad coffee and the feeling that something inside me was ticking. The AV technician spotted me and waved. "All set for tonight, sir. Just like we tested." I nodded. "Appreciate it." He grinned. "You sure you don't want me to preload your file? Safer that way." "No," I said softly. "I'll cue it myself." He didn't hear the weight in my tone. Maybe it was better that way. I walked the perimeter of the ballroom while the decorators fussed with candles. Everywhere I looked, perfection gleamed. The groom's family didn't build beauty, they rented it. Every petal, every light fixture, every illusion paid for by someone else's pocket. The kind of wealth that wipes fingerprints instead of earning calluses. I thought of the houses in those grant files, the peeling paint, the veterans who'd signed papers thinking salvation was on the way. Their roofs still leaked, their walls still sagged. And here, the same money that failed them dripped from crystal chandeliers. Inside my jacket, the phone felt heavier than any axe I'd ever carried. A voice broke through my thoughts. "Dad?" She stood in the doorway, veil pushed back, sunlight caught in the small diamond earrings her grandmother once wore. For a second, she was the little girl again, asking if the world was safe. "You look beautiful," I said. She smiled, but her eyes searched mine. "You're not nervous?" "About walking an angel down the aisle? Never." She laughed once, small and shaky. "He can be blunt sometimes. Don't take it personal if he says something stupid tonight." "I've heard worse in firehouses," I said, and she smiled wider, but there was worry behind it. "Dad," she whispered, "promise me you'll just let today be about love, okay? Whatever you're thinking, save it." I wanted to, God, I wanted to, but lies can't be saved. They spread. "I promise," I said. And for that moment it wasn't a lie, it was just unfinished truth. She kissed my cheek, left a faint trace of makeup on my skin, and walked back to the bridal suite. Her perfume lingered after her, lavender and something like sunlight. I sat down on one of the empty benches near the aisle. The string quartet drifted through a rehearsal piece, slow, graceful, full of notes that never quite resolved. The kind of song that makes you feel both hope and dread. Every wedding has that heartbeat, excitement wrapped in fear. Will the vows hold? Will time be kind? Will the person beside you still be the same after the music stops? For me, those questions had a sharper edge. Would she still look at me the same way after tonight? The officiant came by, checked the order of the ceremony, thanked me for my years of service. Someone must have mentioned I was a firefighter. "You must be proud," he said. "I am," I answered. "Pride's the easy part, the rest, that's the work." He didn't understand, but he smiled politely and moved on. By afternoon, guests began arriving, cars gliding up the drive, laughter spilling out before the engines even stopped. I recognized some of the faces from the night before. Same laughter, same judgment disguised as charm. The groom's father clapped me on the shoulder as he passed. "Fine day, Alvin. Let's keep it lighthearted, shall we?" His grin was tight, his eyes already warning me. He'd felt the tension. Rich men always sense when control might slip. "Wouldn't dream otherwise," I said. He walked away satisfied, and that was almost funny. A man who'd built his fortune on other people's roofs now trusted me not to pull the one down over his head. As the music shifted, I looked toward the open doorway where my daughter would appear. My heart kicked once, heavy and deliberate. Years of smoke and loss had scarred my lungs, but nothing prepared them for this breath. The one right before giving her away. I whispered, "One step at a time, Al. In and out." The coordinator waved. The procession began. Bridesmaids in soft blues, groomsmen in matching smiles. I straightened my tie, hands trembling just enough to remind me I was human. When she appeared, everyone stood. Light poured through the doors around her, catching the dust in the air, making it look like snow. She reached for my arm, and together we walked. Her hand was warm. She whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For coming anyway, for not making a scene." I swallowed hard. Wouldn't miss it for the world. We took each step slow, the strings behind us pulling long notes that felt older than vows. Each face we passed blurred into color and light. I saw only her, my daughter, my heartbeat in a white dress. At the altar, I placed her hand in his. The groom looked at me with that same polished smile, the one that hides calculation behind charm. "Thank you, sir," he said. "Take care of her," I replied. My voice didn't shake. "I will," he promised, eyes steady, confident, too confident. I stepped back, let the moment belong to them, but inside something in me settled. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. The ceremony passed like a dream. Vows repeated, rings exchanged, a kiss sealed under applause. Cameras flashed, the air smelled of roses and champagne. When the music swelled for their walk down the aisle, I caught my reflection in one of the tall windows, gray hair, scarred hands, eyes that had seen too many endings. And I thought, this isn't an ending. It's ignition. After the crowd drifted toward cocktails and chatter, I slipped to the side room where the AV console waited. The technician had left it humming, connected, ready. The monitor blinked with the same pairing code as before. I rested my hand on the table. My fingers shook once, then steadied. Tomorrow, no one could say they hadn't been warned. Tomorrow, the truth would walk through the same doors my daughter just did, and I'd be right behind it. Outside, the quartet rehearsed one last flourish. The final note hung in the air, trembling, unresolved. Quiet before strings. Quiet before fire. When the ceremony was over, the crowd drifted toward the reception hall, drawn by champagne and curiosity. Someone had dimmed the lights just enough to make the chandeliers look like captured stars. Waiters moved through the crowd, silver trays balanced like halos above their heads. The laughter was louder now, the air thicker, sweeter, like sugar before it burns. I stayed near the back of the ballroom. My jacket felt heavier than before, and the phone in my pocket hummed against my ribs like a heartbeat. Every instinct I'd learned on the job, the smell of smoke before the flames, the silence before the roof gives way, was whispering now. At the head table, the groom and his new wife smiled for photos, every grin precise and perfect. The band struck a light tune and people swayed in their seats. It looked like joy. It even sounded like it. But I'd seen fake smiles before, funerals where people lied to the casket and called it closure. When the plates cleared, the master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. "If we could have your attention." The crowd quieted, turning toward the stage. "We'll begin the toasts." The best man stood first, a tall kid with a slick part and a speech full of jokes that landed only with the groom's side of the room. Then came the maid of honor, voice trembling with sweetness. Each word tightened something inside me. I watched my daughter laugh, then glance my way, as if making sure I was behaving. I was. For now. The groom rose next, glass in hand. He didn't use notes. He didn't need them. He looked born for microphones. "First," he said, "thank you all for being here to celebrate our story." His voice carried easily, confident. "Love is rare, but legacy is rarer." The crowd murmured approval. He had them already. "My family has spent generations building homes, lifting others up," he continued. "Service is in our blood. And today I'm honored to welcome into that heritage a woman who understands hard work and humility." A ripple of polite laughter spread across the room. I saw my daughter's smile falter for half a second, then fix itself again. "She's taught me that true grace comes from simplicity," the groom went on, "and that every man can rise above his roots if he's lucky enough to find the right company." He looked directly at me when he said that, just for a heartbeat, but long enough. The crowd followed his gaze. I could feel it, the shared smirk of people who think money makes them untouchable. I took a slow sip of water. The glass shook just once, then steadied. He finished with practiced charm. "To family, to legacy, and to building futures that last." The applause came like rain, quick, empty, gone before it could soak in. My daughter leaned over, whispered something to him. He nodded, smiling that same rehearsed smile. I watched her mouth move and thought of how many times I'd taught her that words mean nothing without heat behind them. The MC asked, "Would the father of the bride like to say a few words?" The room turned. I hadn't planned to speak, but some fires don't wait for permission. I stood. The microphone felt cold in my hand. "Thank you," I said quietly. My voice carried anyway. I wasn't planning on making a toast tonight. I figured I'd just sit back, smile, and let the young ones have their day. Soft laughter, a few nods. But since we're talking about legacy, maybe I should share a story. The groom's smile froze. His father leaned forward in his chair. "I spent 40 years in the fire service," I said. "When you run into burning buildings, you learn something about what's real and what's painted on. You see, fire..." I paused. "Fire strips away everything that isn't honest. Plastic melts, paint bubbles. Only steel and stone survive." I let the words hang there. People shifted in their seats. "So when I see something shiny," I went on, "I tend to check what's underneath. Old habit." The projector screen behind the stage flickered to life. The crowd turned. On it appeared a web page, the same one I'd saved earlier. Marshfield Heritage Foundation, building homes, building hope. The groom's head snapped toward the AV table. I already had my phone in hand, thumb steady. "I was curious about this foundation," I said. "The one my new in-laws are so proud of." So I looked into it. It's amazing what you can find when you don't mind a little digging. I clicked once. The next slide showed property records, 3 houses, 3 addresses, 3 quick flips. These homes, I said, were supposed to be repaired for veterans and widows, but the money didn't go to them, it went. I looked at the groom's father. Elsewhere. Someone gasped. The groom's mother half rose from her chair. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, I said. I'm here because truth has a way of catching fire, and I'd rather light the match myself than watch it burn uncontrolled. The groom stood suddenly. This is inappropriate. Sit down, son, I said, calm as rain. I'm not done. The projector flickered again. Screenshots, bank routing numbers, the same P.O. box, the veteran complaint. You see these transactions? I said. They're public. Record. Anyone with a browser can find them. Every dollar that should have fixed a roof ended up funding parties like this. Murmurs filled the hall. The groom's father's face drained of color. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" I let the silence grow. Then I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were wide, glassy. Not angry yet, just lost. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "I promised you I'd keep today about love, so I will. Love means truth, and truth means we stop pretending." The groom's father shouted, "Cut the screen!" But the technician hesitated, frozen in shock. The image stayed. I closed the slideshow, pocketed my phone, and handed the microphone back. That's all I wanted to say. No yelling, no revenge, just facts. The room buzzed like a hive, kicked open. Guests rose, whispering, some pulling out phones. The groom reached for my daughter's hand, but she pulled it back. She looked from him to me, back to the screen, then to the floor. Her voice was small. "Is it true?" He tried to speak. No sound came out. The MC stammered something about dessert, trying to save the mood, but it was too late. The air had changed. Once truth enters a room, it doesn't leave politely. I walked toward the exit, every step slow, steady. Behind me, chaos simmered. Raised voices, phones ringing, the sound of control collapsing. Outside, night had fallen. The sky was dark but clean, no smoke, no fire, just stars. I breathed deep, letting the cool air scrape the heat out of my lungs. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel ashamed of my hands. They were scarred, yes, but honest. Inside, the band started playing again, awkwardly, as if music could patch what truth had torn open. It couldn't. I looked through the tall glass doors one last time. My daughter was standing still in the center of the room, surrounded by people who no longer knew where to look. The groom was speaking fast, desperate. She wasn't listening. And me? I was already walking toward the parking lot, toward whatever came next. The toast was over, and it had drawn blood. The ballroom never really went quiet after I sat down. It just changed pitch. Laughter had turned into whispers, then into the dry hiss of phone cameras and texts flying across tables. When people don't know what to believe, they start looking at screens instead of faces. The AV monitor still glowed at the back of the hall. A few guests had crowded around it, scrolling back through the presentation as if a lie might reveal itself if they stared hard enough. I hadn't planned for that part. I'd meant to show the facts, close the file, walk away. But the truth, once shown, doesn't go back in the box. The groom's father was on his phone, voice sharp, trying to sound calm. The mother's pearls had shifted crooked on her neck. The groom himself was pacing, his arm around my daughter's waist, whispering fast, urgent words into her ear. She wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at the screen. A man I didn't know stepped toward me, broad shoulders, dark suit, security by the look of him. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." "Happy to," I said, "once I get my phone back." He hesitated. He wasn't sure whether to treat me as a threat or a guest. That's the thing about class. It confuses people about courage. The AV technician jogged over, pale but curious. "Mr. Marshfield," he said to the groom's father, Someone's trying to access the projector again. Same device ID. The father froze. Turn it off, he hissed. The technician nodded, tapped a few keys. The screen flickered, then came back on, brighter, louder. Not me this time. A different image filled the wall. An email chain. Subject line: Grant Cycle Payout Schedule. Heritage Accounts. Gasps rippled through the hall. The groom spun around, furious. Who's doing this? I lifted my hands. Not me. I only showed what was public. But I knew exactly what had happened. When I'd mirrored my phone earlier, the system had cached the browser tabs. Now it was running through them automatically, page by page. Each slide rolled like a confession. Invoices marked charity disbursement tied to companies that didn't exist. Payments issued on Sundays. Transfer memos signed C. Marshfield and H. Heritage. Screens don't lie, even when the mouths behind them do. The groom lunged toward the control table, nearly knocking a waiter's tray aside. He fumbled with the keyboard, panic replacing polish. When the final page appeared, silence hit the room like a door slamming. Recipient: Marshfield Heritage Foundation. Payee: J. Marshfield. Purpose: vendor reimbursement, event coordination. A single line beneath it, authorized via joint account Groom, primary. Someone whispered, "That's his signature." Another voice, older, female, said, "They paid themselves with donation money." The groom's father tried to laugh, high and brittle. "There's been a mistake. These files are confidential." I stood slowly. Then why do they say public record access at the bottom corner? He stopped. Everyone could see it. My daughter